Hello, this is War and Politics channel. My name is Vladislav Novikov. Today we're recording an interview with Yuri Rashkin, host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and local elected officials in the state of Wisconsin. Yuri, hello.
Hello, Vladislav. Thank you for the invitation, and let's get cracking, figuring out what's going on here.
Yeah. Trump said he will talk to Putin on Tuesday. He also mentioned that a lot of work has been done over the weekend. What exactly did Trump mean by that, and what are your personal expectations for this call?
We know that the guiding star for Donald Trump has been to have good relations with Vladimir Putin. So in this situation, he's working to improve his relationship with Vladimir Putin. And honestly, it appears that Vladimir Putin wouldn't mind improving the relationship with United States and Donald Trump either. And it looks like what they're trying to do right now is to do a little dance called how to get Ukraine to effectively surrender, while Donald Trump gets, and perhaps Vladimir Putin too, gets a Nobel Peace Prize. So that on one hand, Ukraine is left defenseless, but at the same time, American president and Russian president can claim victory because the war, as they call it, or immediate hostility may have ceased for the moment, and therefore, at least these two men in their mind are clearly deserving and worthy of Nobel Peace Prize. In the process of this dance, people that are looking at this from the outside may seem a little confused by some of the movements of some of the dancers involved, because it may seem like sometimes Keith Kellogg is not included in the delegation, or it may seem that Donald Trump sounds like he's threatening to put some kind of tariffs on Russia, or Marco Rubio can say if Russia disagrees, we'll know who the impediment to peace is. But in the end, we see that everything is moving in the same direction, that Russia and the United States, currently the governments, are moving in the same direction, which is to put Ukraine in a position where it has to agree to a so-called peace on very unpalatable terms for Ukraine. And so far, there hasn't been any pressure put on Russia, which is an indication to some that Donald Trump is an inept in negotiations. But for those that think that Donald Trump is working against the interests of the United States, against the national security interests of the United States, and really mostly to help Russia, all of these decisions and movements by the administration seem quite logical, if not predictable, because Donald Trump is going to attempt to rehabilitate and pardon Vladimir Putin and Russia and his whole regime as much and as quickly as it is possible, while at the same time arguing with former President Biden's ability to issue pardons, but that may be a separate conversation. Nonetheless, Donald Trump is, I guess it is part of the story, because Donald Trump is embracing political attacks on his political opponents, which is so Russian, really, when you think about it. So that's another indication of how closely the current administration is aligned with the Russian administration. As far as what any particular thing that can happen during this call or this meeting or that meeting, on one hand, we see that half of them do not occur, but on the other hand, we now have a strong perception that America, as far as its president and Putin, have a strong relationship. That message has been, I feel, conveyed very thoroughly to us, to the point that now majority of Americans disapprove of how closely our president is aligned with Russia and Russian policies, in part because of what's happening with Ukraine, but not just because of what's happening with Ukraine. So Donald Trump is going to show that he has meetings or constant contact with Vladimir Putin. I'm sure that he is on that White House is now on the constant contact. It reminds me of a business that specializes in newsletters. I'm sure there's a newsletter that's comes out from Kremlin that is now received regularly in the White House, and our director of national intelligence can put it in a form of a briefing for the president. So they're all on the same page. It's just that Europe and Ukraine ended up being left outside of that room. But perhaps that's not the room where the actual decisions are being made. That's where people are dividing things that they do not own. Russia and America, United States, arguing about what it doesn't belong to them, such as Ukraine or Europe or other parts of the world. But that's the process that unfortunately we have to live through, because we are dealing with people who have no understanding of consequences for their actions. And until there are consequences for Putin and for Trump, they're going to keep pushing their line of thinking, trying to say that white is black, black is white, and if you disagree, then I guess you're crazy. But I think reality is going to prove their realism wrong.
Okay, Yuri, but we have another important question. Trump mentioned he'll discuss territorial issues and control over the nuclear power plant with Putin. Yesterday, Waltz suggested some territories might be exchanged for security for Ukraine, but Ukraine firmly rejects giving up any territories. Could the US really be considering trading parts of Ukraine's sovereign land?
Well, it depends. If Ukraine is part of the United States, then I suppose yes, but I don't see United States trading Alaska to Russia for good relations, even though Russia would be very happy to get Alaska back. So I don't think that we're talking about realism here, or realistic or reality here. We're talking about what's happening in the minds of people who feel like they own the situation. And if it is truly so, and that is what's going to be happening, then Putin is getting everything he wants. And B, where is the pressure from the United States on Putin of any sort? Because even the statement about security guarantees, I'm afraid that all Ukrainians, when they think of security guarantees from the United States, think of Budapest Memorandum and think of security guarantees that memorandum or agreement was supposed to give, at least as far as Ukrainians believed it did. They felt that they were now under protection of the United States and other nations that signed the Budapest Memorandum. And the United States, we felt like maybe this was, I don't know, an important political document or something, but it certainly didn't seem to carry the level of guarantee that Ukrainian people expected from the United States. And so now, when the United States is offering guarantees, yes, on one hand, that's all Zelensky seems to be talking about is guarantee, guarantee, guarantee. You know, like he's buying a tape deck and then he would like to get a 2-year protection. You know, tape decks may not be available in 2 years, but that's a different conversation. So demanding guarantees from Donald Trump also is a very questionable idea, because the guarantee, it's just two incompatible ideas in the first place. And in addition to all of this, if United States wants to be considered a respectable player, if we're talking about cards, then you got to show that you have some cards that you're willing to use, not just to help Russia, but also to help Ukraine. And if United States considers right now that all the help that we're able to provide is to resume help that already Biden administration agreed to provide, yes, Ukraine will say thank you very much, but it doesn't build any trust whatsoever going forward that Trump administration will actually do anything to provide any guarantee of security of Ukraine going forward. And that means that the guarantee is not really worth the paper it's written on. I'm sure it's going to be very nice paper with yellow label. It's going to be great. We'll say Trump all over everything. But then what? Because it's easy for United States to say, you know what, Ukraine, you should give those 4 territories to Russia, and Ukraine, you should stop trying to build up your armed forces. You should really lay down your weapons. And what kind of an agreement is this? And also say that there should be immediately elections because we don't like your president. We want a new president. It's a really misunderstanding of how things work on a very fundamental level. If I don't give you anything of value, then I have very little influence on you. But if I give you things of value, then I can take things away. I can give you more things in the future. Then things I have to say have some kind of influence and impact on you. And if Trump doesn't understand that he lost the trust with Ukrainians, then it's important for Ukrainians to understand that, to remember that feeling and not, I guess, and not forget it, because I think Ukrainians would really like to have good relationship with the United States. They really, really would. And they would really like to feel like they can rebuild the relationship with any president of the United States. Except that this president of the United States is sending a very clear message that he just doesn't care what happens to Ukraine going forward. And perhaps if it is part of Russian empire going forward, well, then so the better. As far as the American president is concerned, who is mostly concerned about having good relationship with president of Russia. So security guarantees from this person, I feel like Ukraine is in a tough spot, and it's important to maintain the best possible relationship with the United States, with the understanding that United States government is working very closely with the government of Russia, and government of Russia clearly has nothing good for Ukraine in mind, and therefore neither do other countries that work with it. We don't expect North Korea to be suddenly like, maybe we can pry North Korea away from China or from, no, we don't think that. But yet we think that with Donald Trump, we should be able to do that. Well, you know, this is not North Korea. We're America, of course, very different. And if somebody wants to keep trying to pry Donald Trump away from Vladimir Putin, then I feel, on one hand, sure, it's a free country. They can do that. But if they're serious, it seems like it's a waste of time and effort and energy, because really the solution for Ukraine going forward is Europe, is other countries around the world besides Europe that care about protecting their democracy. It's not about the secret to future success of Ukraine does not lie right now in rebuilding its relationship with the United States. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. And I think this situation isn't just about cards. It's also about democracy and justice. Today, the New York Times reported that the US is leaving the international group investigations Russians' war crimes in Ukraine. This could suggest letting Putin avoid accountability. Could this actually be true? Does it fit with democracy well? Is this the kind of democracy the United States wants for itself and the rest of the world?
I think it's important to understand that right now the United States is shifting its value system. It's attempting, at least, to shift its value system. And if that sounds like a lot of work, it is a lot of work. And values often start with universities and higher education, where they're promoted. And those values of free thinking, of critical thinking, of criticizing those in power, no matter who they are, is something that's always been tradition of universities. And we see that there is attack going from this administration towards any freedom, really. Academic freedom is just part of it. So that makes sense that Yale or any other university would lose any sort of funding. Now, because there's a lot of funding being lost for different kind of programs, it's a little disorienting about which causes are being like more hated than others. But ultimately, it's the idea that government is doing anything to help people. That is the problem here, is really the idea under assault. Is that government should not be helping people, it should not be helping the weak, it should be captured by those who are strong and used to benefit who are strong, to make those who are strong stronger. Because if strength isn't everything, then it's not even clear what anything else matters. Because we're dealing with people who just want power, who want strength, and freedom is a problem. Also, we're dealing with attack on funding all over our government due to DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, this gang being run by Elon Musk. for which he doesn't even seem to want to take full responsibility, because he probably can understand what kind of a devastating effect these changes are going to have on the United States. And so there's lots of different research that is being destroyed right now. This is almost like having Luddites running around and crashing the machines because they're against technology. Well, it kind of sort of is, but when we have people who are opposed to vaccines and instead they would rather, I don't know what they would rather do. I don't think they would rather die. But reality, again, conflicts with their realism, and this is where people maybe feel like they're doing things for the right cause, but they're not getting the right effect. And Yale and Ukraine and the research and destruction of our government are all interconnected, but I don't know to what extent this is a direct attack on Ukraine and more of a just general attack on everything that makes any sense, such as tracking military crimes, war crimes that Russia commits, and trying to help children who have been kidnapped reconnect with their families, and whatever else Yale or any other project does. Right now, we're just days out from the essentially death of American broadcasting overseas, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, all of those institutions, and I insist that those are institutions, have been effectively silenced. And we in the United States don't even understand the impact that this has all over the world. Okay. It's just incredible this is where our ignorance is again playing against us, because if you tell American Voice of America, they're like, I don't know what that is. It's not ABC, it's not CBS, VOA, what is that? But as far as people around the world are concerned, Voice of America is Voice of America. And if we don't have voice, then we've been silenced. That is the oddest thing, considering that we've been broadcasting, Voice of America has been broadcasting, I believe, for over 80 years. This is the first time they've been silenced. Nobody else was able to silence them until Putin and Musk and Trump were able to push that idea through, all thanks to American voters who decided that, that getting fascist government was worth potentially saving 20%, on discount on some goods or other. And of course, in the end, when we bring these types of people to power, we're not going to get a discount. We're not going to get cheaper anything, because in the end, all of this leads to war and catastrophe. And the only question is, will there be World War III, to which our government is driving the train right now as fast as they seemingly can? Or will the people of the United States in some way rise up against this and respond in ways that are unpredictable? Because the damage that is being done to our country right now is really unpredictable, although I suppose it could have been foreseen, because it is Project 2025. It is what Kremlin wants. I guess it's just 2 + 2 = 4.
Mm-hmm. Yuri, Zelensky says Russia doesn't want peace, even after the US offered a proposal. But it seems like Trump's administration isn't listening to him. Is anyone paying attention to Zelensky? US Secretary of State Rubio called talks with Russia promising, and Witkoff even said Putin shares Trump's philosophy. What's going on here?
A couple of things. First of all, it's important to understand that when different people say loaded words, such as word peace, they mean different things. And to Putin, word peace means capture of Ukraine. And to Trump, peace means capitulation of Ukraine to Putin's demands. And to Zelensky, peace means some kind of guarantee of future stability for his country, which is why he's willing to step down if his country's stability is guaranteed in the future by its acceptance, for instance, acceptance to NATO, which is a statement that Zelensky made, and it fits with his view that he's trying to secure future safety for his country, and he's willing to sacrifice his position if that will bring the desired result. But if the desired result is not being brought and all is being trying to accomplish is just destruction of Ukraine electorally, diplomatically, economically, politically, in every possible way, then what is the point of him resigning? What is the point of him not running for election? Now, it is important to notice that Canada, which is not at war and is a totally separate country from the United States, how did they handle the situation and attack that they faced right away? Well, they saw their prime minister resign, and essentially, effectively, and they staged elections. At elections, we saw that Mark Carney, person vehemently opposed to Trump's policies, ended up winning, while that side of political equation was doing rather badly prior to Trudeau saying that he was going to leave. So, being able to leave and allow the country to reform and to center around another person may work. On the other hand, we saw what happened in the United States, where Joe Biden stood down and Kamala Harris took over his place, and that, well, we know how that ended. So there's a situation where all Ukrainians can do is they can look at experience of everybody else, they can look at their own experience, and, get fooled once, shame on you, get fooled twice, shame on me. So that's, I think, is a challenge that is there for every people. But I think Ukrainians need to understand that their president is somebody they can be proud of. Because I think Zelensky, for all the things that I've disagreed with him, for all the specific decisions that I can argue with him till I'm blue in the face, I feel that he's shown amazing courage and the quick wit and quick thinking on his feet. And of course, maybe that's why next time, should he ever meet with Donald Trump again, there should be an interpreter so that Vladimir Zelensky can't quickly reply to things that perhaps he understands and can reply quickly, because he has the comedic improv upbringing. I mean, that's his background. So he's a quick thinker on his feet. Good for him, except that he's very courageous. And in this situation, when we're dealing with Donald Trump, courage is helpful and required, but it also requires a certain level of wisdom, of understanding that you're dealing with a person with an incredibly fragile ego. On the other hand, I am incredibly thankful to Zelensky for helping us see what Donald Trump really thinks about Ukraine, really thinks about Zelensky, really thinks about the situation, and as well as J.D. Vance. I think that Zelensky is kind of like a reveal agent, where by responding to him, other people open up. He's almost like a Scooby-Doo that shows up and just pulls the mask off the villain. Scooby-Doo, where are you?
Okay, and a few words about money. Trump keeps changing import tariff almost every day, adding new ones, canceling old ones, or raising them again. He's even risking hunting neighbors and making life tougher for Americans just to win his trade war. Is this really worth it, or is it still too soon to tell? How do Americans actually feel about all this?
I feel that Americans are kind of freaked out because, on one hand, this Project 2025 was advertised. If you paid any attention in the past election, you heard about Project 2025. But what you heard about it was that there was all this list of horrible things that Republicans supposedly wanted, but they will never be able to get all of those things through. And Donald Trump, who is running for president, vehemently denies that he has anything to do with it, even though it's written by his people. Well, who knows? So on one hand, those who wanted to pay attention knew it. The document is public, all 1,000 pages of it. But who's going to sit there and read 1,000 pages of things that somebody wants to do to reshape the government and our country in totally ways that are going to be unpalatable to overwhelming majority of people in this country? Well, we see what's happening. It turned out that when you have a president who is hell-bent on pushing his agenda and doesn't care about things that other presidents cared about, then he has incredible levers of power and influence. And we saw this just by what's happening with the Republican Party, the Republican faction in House of Representatives, when they formed together into a single whole to vote for a president's wishes, allowing the government to remain functional, but on their terms. Democrats were not prepared for this, and therefore they lost and are now in such situation that Senator Schumer is postponing his book tour because he's supposed to go out this week to talk about his book. What a bad timing, because you know what? Democrats are going to see him and they're going to tell him, they would tell him how unhappy they are with him, because Democrats are showing lack of actual knowing of political strategy, which is just really, really depressing, considering that economically the country is being pushed off a cliff. We see people losing trust in American economy. And that is damaging the economy on the inside and the outside. And this is far above what was advertised during the campaign, because I don't remember anybody speaking about Greenland or Canada in those terms. We were concerned about China. We were discussing whether or not we should have good relationship with Russia, which, by the way, Donald Trump always said that he wants to have good relationship with Vladimir Putin. And what's wrong with that? If you never thought there was anything wrong with that, then you voted for him. Here you go. That's what that looks like when we want to have good relationship with Russia, and there's nothing wrong with it. There is something wrong with it. There's a lot wrong with it. But starting with the fact that Russia wants America to be destroyed. And right now, we are doing it practically with our own hands, choking ourselves and showing to everybody else that money should be invested right now elsewhere. And this is what investors feel. This is what people in the country feel. It's kind of ironic because there's a discussion about how we need to have boycotts. Because, Americans, consumers, we're always like, this business is supporting this terrible cause, so I'm not going to support this terrible business. I'm going to vote with my money. That kind of thinking. It's so American. It's wonderful. But the point is that we want to punish people for their actions with our dollars. And that's there's a lot of discussion. Does it actually make any sense? Is it just like children's games? Because it sends a very small message, but really insignificant unless it is sustained. But what we're seeing right now is like a natural boycott of economy, where people are boycotting the idea of spending their money. They're just afraid that they don't know what's going to happen. Should they look for a new job? Should they be sitting with a job? If they're somehow connected to the government, which means that they are very vulnerable now, do you think they're going to go out on a long vacation, spend lots of money? They're probably going to hold on to their money and see what happens. And that's what everybody is doing, looking at Donald Trump. I think institutionally, statewide, every investor, I think right now is either looking for, I would imagine, an opportunity to make quick money in different places, speculation, or wait until we see what happens. I think Warren Buffett is actually right now liquidating his real estate empire and hoarding cash. Which is another indication that this is not the time to be active in the economy, in a capitalist economy of the United States. And we'll see what consequences this will have, because this is really the purpose of this is to send a message to Trump voters that they really made a big mistake by voting for this person, and now we're all paying the price, including them. Mm-hmm. If they feel like the price is too high and they would like to hold somebody responsible, and it's not Joe Biden, it's not Canada, it's the person who's actually in the White House, who is controlling Senate and House of Representatives, and who has heavy influence over Supreme Court, Donald Trump. If people just kind of focus their attention that way, then that will really play into the hands of those who would like to replace Donald Trump with J.D. Vance or somebody else who is even more palatable to the heavy investors, techno-billionaires, techno-autocrats standing behind a throne. So this is a situation where it's not exactly clear what is a happy ending here. But I guess we just have to keep swimming. Keep swimming.
Yuri, thank you for this conversation. And viewers, don't forget to subscribe to Yuri YouTube channel and War and Politics YouTube channel. Yuri, thank you and see you soon.
You're very welcome. I'm glad we managed to work a couple of cartoon references into this conversation with Finding Nemo and Scooby-Doo. I think, there's got to be something good that will help us in American culture, that will help us get out of this darkness and mess that we got in. Maybe humor, maybe cartoons, somewhere we got to start. Thank you.
Yeah.